continue this conversation with WTI down so sharply this morning as demand continuing to deteriorate for oil around the globe. Prices are down about 75% so far this year to date, on pace for its worst year since at least 1983. Joining us right now to talk about what comes next is Helima Croft of RBC Capital Markets, with us as well as our own Mike Santoli, CNBC senior markets commentator. Helima, you know, Joe and Becky and I were talking about this even just last week. If WTI crude normally was at these prices, you would have not just an all-out panic in the oil market, which we're clearly having, but you'd have an all-out panic in the equities market. Why is that not happening?
I mainly focus on the oil markets. This is a really sort of interesting, unique story to the oil market. What has been hit the hardest by this pandemic has been, vehicle traffic use. People are not flying, they're not driving. And so this is a real story about storage filling up. We're going to be in a situation now where Cushing could reach tank tops by mid-May. So there's a lot of this that's really unique to the oil market, and there's a lot of concern about what comes next, particularly around the storage issue.
And so what does come next when it comes to the storage issue?
We're expecting, Cushing to reach tank tops by mid-May. There are other places that you can store this crude, potentially like Louisiana. But until we get, signs that U.S. gasoline demand is improving, that people are going to drive again, we're continuing to be very, very bearish on the demand outlook for oil. Now, there was this OPEC cut last week, this historic cut. There was a lot of focus on that. And that's really sort of turning off the tap in the bathtub that's overflowing. And so the situation would be far worse. But the problem is those cuts don't take effect till May 1. There is still a lot of crude that is on the water right now that is going to refineries that do not need it. And so that is the challenge right now. Those OPEC cuts are not coming till May. A ton of crude on the water and demand continuing to collapse.
And real quick, before I get to Mike, is your expectation come May, come June, come July, how quickly do you think it gets turned back on? Are you anticipating it gets turned back on in a meaningful way? You're in the same position we all are, which is we're trying to figure out the timeline, right?
We're trying to figure out the timeline of this pandemic. Again, when do people start driving again? We do think the OPEC cuts are important because what it saves is it potentially saves, the fall. It saves 2021. But everybody's going to be watching what is the trajectory. When does the U.S. reopen? When are people comfortable driving again? Gasoline demand is going to be the key to the recovery of the oil market.
Right. Hey, Mike, you want to weigh in on the disconnect between the equity market and the oil market? And the other piece of this is just how many energy companies are going to be filing for bankruptcy at these types of prices, and what does that do to the larger economy?
Obviously, with the extremes in the near-term prices in oil, normally you would think it would actually create a greater ripple effect. But the reasons we're not is it's not really giving the equity markets much more information beyond what we already knew about the absence of any demand in these storage issues. If you look at the June crude futures, for example, they're popped right back above 20. So this is kind of a near-term indigestion issue. The other thing is, on that high yield point and how many energy companies might not make it, the Fed is there essentially saying we're not going to allow that to become a disorderly default cycle across all of high yield debt or other industries. And you see the likes of Ford Motor Company and Marriott being able to raise enormous amounts of credit. So it seems as if that's been backstopped on that side. I'm not going to deny that the equity market is operating in the zone where it feels free at the moment to ignore a lot of the very near-term economic issues. Even bond yields where they are not that helpful for equities because they're so low. But again, the equity market says, yeah, we got that. And that's, by the way, why last week it was the FANG-type stocks that were working, not really economically cyclical ones. So I do think that it is a sort of a perception disconnect, but it's not necessarily at the root of what's going on in the equity markets. It's truly ignoring all that. It's saying we understand this, and we're implicitly making a bet that this is a 1 to 2 quarter shutdown period. If the equity market's wrong about that, then this rally has probably gone a little bit too far. But until we know that, we can't say.
Right. And Helima, real quick, your thought in terms of just what happens to the oil patch in terms of the fact that we do seem to have a backstop by the Fed. You do have these MLPs and others that just have, remarkable yields right now. Is that a safe place to keep your money?
We look at this I cover the commodities. And again, right now, we don't see any near-term relief for this oil market. There are going to be questions about what more can President Trump do? Is he going to potentially pay producers to keep the oil in the ground? Will we start filling up the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? That can help incrementally, but there's not a lot President Trump can do right now to fix the demand situation. So we remain really concerned about the outlook for oil near term.